I shaved my vag. Welcome back to I Shaved My Vag for This, where we say out loud everything that goes unsaid. I'm Katie Thompson, your fearless and shameless leader, back with you on the streets in the wild world of women's health, where we have vaginas and we're learning about them side by side. And don't worry, we'll have a little bit of science sprinkled in there just to keep your attention. There's no better time to be a woman. We are paving the way to billion-dollar enterprises, new inventions, and plenty of seats at the table. And so what better way to celebrate by drinking antifreeze? Do I have your attention? Good, it's showtime.
Oh, teeny, teeny. Oh, teeny, teeny. Oh, teeny, teeny. How was I supposed to know that something wasn't right? Yeah. Oh, teeny, teeny. It's so hard to see you go. And now you're out of sight. Yeah, show me how this is supposed to be. My martini, 'cause I need to know now, because my martini is stalking me, and now that I've quit, I look 18. Maybe it's not you, but it's not mine. I'm gonna try. Rich girl sober one more time.
That's right. Today we're talking all things alcohol. Our guest today is one of the most powerful voices and emerging thought leaders in this space. A clinical social worker supervisor, certified eating disorder specialist, and perinatal mental health certified clinician. She joins us with thousands of hours aiding high-performing women along their sober, curious journeys. She offers a new and refreshing take on the relationship with alcohol and focuses on discovering your purpose and fulfillment in order to lead a healthier and more empowered life. Everyone give it up for our powerful and insightful and our rich girl sobriety muse, Jane Ballard. I shaved my vag for this. Jane.
Hi.
Welcome to I Shaved My Vag for This.
Thank you, Katie. I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. I am so grateful to have your voice heard on the show. And I really sought you out because I think your approach is so different. You really captured like what it feels like as a modern day woman that has many things going on and is interested about, you know, finding a healthier balance in their relationship with alcohol.
Absolutely.
And your messaging has nothing to do with shame or guilt. And it's all about how do you feel empowered in your decision making, and then you can start running an enterprise.
Yeah. What feels billions. Good, you know, what helps you reach your potential.
So I want to talk to you a bit about what we have been conditioned to, which is this concept of alcoholism.
There's a lot of emotion attached to that word. Some people identify with it and it's hugely helpful for them. But before they get to that point, they are often like, I don't want anything to do with that term.
Right.
And so I think in general, for most people, the term alcoholic is a barrier to looking at their relationship with alcohol.
Of course, it's a label.
It's a label.
And it's hard to shed that too. Can we lay the foundation a bit with the term alcohol use disorder? Because I think that's what we're now calling it instead of the artist formerly known as alcoholism. Can you just walk us through how we would define that? And then I would love to clarify where some of us might be fitting in that description or maybe not.
Absolutely. So the term alcoholic is really a cultural term. It is not a clinical term. The clinical term now, since the DSM-5 came out, I think in 2013, is alcohol use disorder. It was previously split into two diagnoses. One was alcohol abuse, which was less severe, and the second was alcohol dependence. So alcohol use disorder, there are 11 criteria that describe this disorder, and in order to meet criteria for some level of alcohol use disorder, you have to meet two of these criteria.
Okay.
Now, the problem with alcohol use disorder is that it is a medical model. The medical model looks at disease and pathology. Therefore, when you're looking at a person and placing a pathological label on them, that tends to be disempowering, and there's a lot of stigma associated with that. Nobody wants that kind of label.
Right.
Therefore, people aren't interested in looking at their drinking because nobody wants to get anywhere near that.
No, you want to defer.
You want to defer.
And so those 11 qualifications, can you briefly kind of summarize what lives inside of those?
It talks about having to have this to a clinically significant degree. So something is clinically significant when it causes an inability to function in one area of life. So that could be a relationship issue. That could be with your social group. That could be at work, legally, financially, educationally. And so when somebody is drinking to the degree that they have some consequences in any of those areas. And really, if you've ever been drunk, you've probably, maybe you've gotten in a fight with someone, or maybe you called in sick because you were hungover, or you didn't study for your test because you didn't feel well, or you slept through your alarm. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to have a consequence from alcohol use.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being aware of it.
Yes.
You know, for me, I have so much fun, and I love, extra funny when I'm drinking.
I bet.
And then the text messages I send are just very on point. But then the next day I'm like, who is she? She's an animal. And so that is my consequence, actually.
Took over my body. And
like I would hang out with her again, but I would have questions. You know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is kind of determining that it's becoming aware of it, I guess. Not even in the moment. Maybe
just being
the day
willing
after.
to take a look at it and get curious about it. Some of the other factors that come into play are attempts to cut back at drinking and not being able to do that. So saying like, okay, I'm only going to have 2 drinks tonight, and then maybe you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, or saying I'm only going to drink on the weekends, but then inevitably you drink 4 to 5 times every week for the next month.
Got it.
It could be something like you start having cravings.
Okay.
You know, that your body feels 5 o'clock rolling around and it's ready to turn off and let loose, and it's thinking a glass of wine sounds really good right now.
Yeah.
Or I need to find a patio and get a frozen margarita.
Right.
That's what my body would tell me occasionally. A lot of times people develop rules in order to not meet these criteria. Like I never drink before 5 o'clock, or I never drink alone, or I only drink beer or wine. You know, there's oftentimes a lot of mental gymnastics that goes along with this. And again, even the word craving has a little bit of a shaming connotation. And so, I mean, I have cravings for dark chocolate, but I don't go around thinking, oh my gosh, I'm fiending for some chocolate. You know, it's like, oh, that sounds good right now. Like a craving is a very benign, normal human phenomenon.
And it's important to just acknowledge it maybe and let it just fly by.
Notice it. Yeah, just notice it. And just try to take the criticism and the judgment out of it.
It can be playful, you know?
It can be playful.
Just see it and say, oh, that's nice. It would be good, but you're not going to do that. You're rich girl sober now.
You're rich girl sober, and rich girls know that a craving usually lasts about 20 minutes. And if you do nothing, it will pass. You don't have to do anything, and the craving will pass.
Is it important to have that acknowledgement in the 20 minutes instead of just ignoring or pushing it away?
I think so, because if you push it away, it's probably going to come back up pretty quickly. And even if you let it run its course, it still may come back up. But I think if you can tell yourself, like, just hang on, you know, get through the next 20 minutes, check in with yourself again, and then see how you feel.
I like that because I can set a timer.
Yeah, more often than not, it's going to have passed within 20 minutes.
Survivable is
the
word. It is survivable.
You know,
absolutely.
It's like when we're in a state, whether it's a state of physical distress or pain or mental distress or pain, it feels like it's going to last forever. You know, when I have a migraine headache, it's like I just feel like I'm going to feel horrible for the rest of my life. It feels never ending. But we have to remind ourselves when we're in those states that they're temporary and that they're going to pass and we will feel good again.
And it's almost, when you're describing it in that way, it's as if we want to regain control over the craving by satisfying it.
Yeah.
You know,
want to make it go away.
If you just get through the 20 minutes, then you have more control on the other side for a far longer period of time. It's more sustainable in that regard. Survive the craving, sustain for your life. Okay, so I definitely fit in this demographic of what we're seeing is a rising segment of the population of women that are 35 to 44. There's a big percentage of this segment that is saying, I have a high education level. I make a ton of money and delayed starting a family. And therefore, I should just drink because I'm having fun.
Right.
And so I think this is an important one to spend some time on because we've never been in a better position, and yet we're rewarding ourselves with antifreeze.
This is a really good point. Who would like to cheers with some antifreeze?
Not me. I mean, it is pretty.
It can be pretty, yes. And you know, that's the funny thing is that I think in a lot of ways it's something that our culture has started to equate with sophistication and status and success and having a certain level of this lifestyle that is sought after. Mm-hmm. You know, we put our drinks in a beautiful glass with an interesting shape with very thin glass or crystal, and it's colorful, and you know, there's a lot of ritual that goes along with it.
Right.
And I think we forget that we're actually putting ethanol into our bodies, and it's really hard on us physically and emotionally 100%. And spiritually. And
the way you described that was like almost, it took me back to the Prohibition days where it was seen as a luxury maybe to have access to alcohol.
Right.
And the way, you know, our population at that time in our history was very, I guess, polarized. I mean, it was like the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts.
The Great Depression. And
yeah, that had all of
the ultra wealthy and the people who are struggling to feed their families.
Right. And I wonder if there's something in there of like the mindset shift that never really kind of translated to future generations of, yes, I have the money, I have the education, I have the income, but that shouldn't be the status symbol that you're reaching for.
Right.
On the subject matter of women kind of fitting within this age range, this is also an interesting time because we're starting to see that women are entering into perimenopause,
right,
and feeling the onset of those symptoms far sooner than ever before.
Well, then we were educated that we would.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it's an awareness of the hormone fluctuation
right.
and just the change in our bodies.
Yes.
But my question for you is, how does alcohol play a role in that?
Right. Okay. So perimenopause is usually about a 10-year process before menopause is completed. Menopause happens on a single day. It is the day that you have gone 12 months without a period.
It's the cliff.
It's the cliff. And actually people, I think, feel better after menopause. It's perimenopause that is hard because your hormones are all over the place. And this can start anywhere from 35 to well into your 40s. You can begin noticing fluctuations. And in the beginning of perimenopause, maybe the first half, your progesterone is going down. Maybe your periods are getting closer together. Eventually, they start getting further apart. They're all over the place. You have these wild surges of estrogen as your eggs are trying to ovulate, and they can't quite get that egg released. And so they surge estrogen, and then you're like, what is wrong with me? I'm irritable. I'm tired. I don't feel like myself. Am I depressed? You know, what's happening here? And so our bodies are already going through almost like a second puberty.
Okay.
You know, it's the most radical shift in hormones that women have experienced since puberty.
And less permission to express that.
Less permission, yes. Yes. I mean, I don't think there's an expectation that women should change at all, really.
Absolutely not. You hold it together. You got to do that when you were 13, and that's enough.
You hold it together. Yes. So then we bring in alcohol and we introduce ethanol, which then our body is going to really work hard to find equilibrium. So what happens is we drink alcohol, we have this wild elevation in dopamine, which feels really good. It lasts for about 20 minutes, and our body notices this elevation in dopamine, wants homeostasis, and so then it starts releasing dynorphin and cortisol and adrenaline to kind of find this equilibrium. And so that buzz or that feel-good feeling starts wearing off, and we want to maintain that. Nobody wants to feel bad when you're mid-party. Right. And so we have another drink just to get that dopamine back up, but it never quite gets up there. And so then we have another one. And then really the sharp decline in those feel-good neurotransmitters happens when we're asleep. And that's the 2 a.m., 3 a.m. wake up that often happens after a night of drinking, pumping out cortisol. Okay. You know, you may wake up and all of a sudden you feel wired. And your mind is racing like, oh my gosh, what text message did I send? Do I have my phone? Okay. Did I get everything I need? Oh, what did I say to that person? Oh, I can't believe I did that. Mm-hmm. That's when that happens.
Okay.
Because the cortisol wires us, it pops us into an awake state, and then our mind is going. And those thoughts are so sticky, and there's that anxiety.
Yeah. And so when we're coming down from that is when we start experiencing the symptoms that you described almost within the perimenopause phase.
Yes.
So it's like a magnifier.
Absolutely.
You're irritable, you're anxious,
you're
all over the place, you're sweating.
Yes. And it's not just nights where you have more than one drink. To me, what I've experienced myself as a 45-year-old and what I've heard anecdotally from my clients in midlife is that they are noticing huge shifts in how their body responds to small amounts of alcohol. Let's say 1 glass of wine. They're noticing that they don't sleep as well. They wake up and they don't feel as rested. They're waking up in the middle of the night. They're more irritable. Their skin doesn't look good, puffy and dehydrated and less energetic, more lethargic. And I think oftentimes that is attributed solely to perimenopause. And so people are like, oh, it must be my hormones, or I must be depressed. So they get on an SSRI, which I'm all for SSRIs, but not if they're not needed.
Right.
Or they get on hormone replacement, which also I'm also for that. I plan to be on it someday.
Yeah. But it's about addressing the existing variables first.
It may not be needed yet. It may be like, oh, let me do an experiment here. What if I eliminated alcohol for 30 days, 60 days? Would some of these symptoms subside? And I think you've got to give it at least 30 days, because in the beginning, it can feel like deprivation as you're kind of adjusting to a new way of relating to your stress and to life. But eventually you realize, oh my gosh, I have so much energy and I haven't slept this well in years.
When do you feel that?
I think it varies. I felt it immediately. And I've talked to other people who felt it immediately as well.
Wow. That seems worth it.
I mean, yeah.
It's a great selling proposition.
Yes.
I mean, obviously the long game is critical.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it depends on your state of mind when you're going in it.
Yeah. For me personally, it's an act of rebellion a bit that I still want to hold on to, because I'm always doing all of the things. So who says I can't have a glass of wine when I want to have a glass of wine?
Right. But who are you rebelling against? Because everyone is doing it.
Exactly. But I'm rebelling against shame.
You're rebelling against yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, the new rebellion is
software in my brain.
is like not drinking in a world that is obsessed with glamorizing the hell out of alcohol.
Totally.
I mean,
and it's not glamorous
rebellion.
when you just drink the glass of wine in the midst of chaos at home. It's a glass of resentment, is what we like to say.
Yes. Yes.
Fair enough. Okay.
For sure. I think that if women are interested in considering this, reach out. Find someone to talk to and give it a little bit of time. You may do it for a week and say, oh, screw it, start drinking again, try again. I mean, that's my mantra, is begin again. We're getting data here, and start experimenting, see what works for you.
Okay.
And maybe it's not you quit drinking completely, but maybe you're very intentional and you pick and choose when you want to have a glass of wine or when you want to have a margarita on a patio. That's what sober curiosity is.
Yeah.
It's not about labels. It's not about following rules. It's not about deprivation. It's about figuring out what works well for you as an individual and playing around with it and thinking, this is my life and I get to live it however I want to. And there's so much opportunity and potential. And how do I really want to live this life?
Yeah.
And if this isn't it, how I'm doing it now, then let me try some other things out and see what works.
How did you decide to stop drinking? What was your turning point?
So I had a little bit of an unusual experience. I started drinking in my teens. I grew up in the 90s.
Smirnoff and
North
Zima.
Texas, partying on people's land with Natty Light and Zima and Bud Light if we were really feeling rich that weekend.
Yeah. And that was such a charming time.
It was so charming. No
Lots
cell
of conversation,
phones.
loud music, and then running away in the dark.
Running away in the dark. Yeah. The police. Yeah.
Sorry, Mom and Dad.
Sorry.
This is my amends.
Yeah. So I would say that I drank in a culturally acceptable way pretty much my whole teenage through adult life. And in the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, I think our culture experienced a shift in how we view alcohol. And for me, when the pandemic first hit, I actually drank less because historically for me, alcohol was a social lubricant. It helped me let loose and relax and have fun and be talkative and not care as much about what other people were thinking about me. And so when there was less socializing, I was like, I'm great.
Wow.
I'm going to do my workouts and go to bed early and, you know.
Yeah.
But then the world started opening back up in 2021 and people started socializing. And in 2022, my sister had moved back from Seattle just before the pandemic and we were hanging a lot and going out a lot. And simultaneously, I had started back into therapy. I've been in therapy off and on as a therapist. I value that. And so I do my own therapy periodically. And I'd been back in therapy since the fall of 2020.
That's so cool. Therapists are just like us. I had no idea.
We're definitely flawed humans. Absolutely. But I had been doing a lot of work on spiritual beliefs and religion and kind of looking at things that I had been questioning and giving myself permission to question these things. And I just felt this like different view of the world. Like I could see things from a zoomed out bird's eye view where I was less stressed by little details. I could just see it for being kind of like it feels really important today, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. But I would notice that when I drank, even if it was 1 or 2 drinks, I lost that ability and I would find myself getting caught up in minor stressors, feeling more irritable with day-to-day things, my kids or schedules or, you know, whatever, just day-to-day stress.
Right.
And I didn't like that. And I was just observing myself over a period of time and noticing that it was when I drank that I felt this feeling. And I was telling my therapist about this and he was like, well, what do you think? Do you want to give alcohol a little bit of a break, maybe take 30, 60, 90 days off. And it's like, no, alcohol's not a problem for me.
I'm an adult.
Yes. And so that happened and I just kind of went about life. And then I had this experience that I'm still trying to make sense of. It was September 26th, 2022. It was a Monday morning. I had had a glass and a half of rosé the night before in an attempt to calm my overstimulated nerves after taking 20 kids to play paintball for my son's birthday.
Are you okay?
I have since recovered, but I was trying to soothe myself with this rosé.
Naturally.
Yes. And it's like this veil was lifted and all of a sudden I could see, although seeing is not the right word, but I knew I could see and know and understand something that had always been there, but I couldn't see it before. And I could see it now that I would never meet my full potential as a human and do whatever I was put on this earth to do, which I think all of us, our purpose is to meet our potential so that we can serve humanity in a positive way. And I realized that if I'm taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back from moderate drinking for the rest of my life, however long that might be, I'm never going to really get to my full potential. And I decided right then that, well, I didn't even decide. I just was changed when I woke up, that I had no desire to drink and I was done. And I still don't like to use the word forever because I think forever kind of screws with people's heads, mine included.
It might make you rebel against it.
It might make me rebel. You know? This is all about choice and freedom, but I feel my freest when I choose not to drink. And I really didn't mention it to anyone. And then Friday night, we used to go have Mexican food every Friday night with my husband and my kids and have a margarita. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to drink tonight. And my husband was like, oh, okay. And then a few days later, I'm like, I think I'm going to quit drinking for a while. And then I started getting on Instagram and found out there's this whole sober curious movement going on.
Oh, yeah. It's now the ultimate status.
It is the ultimate status. And so I never thought that I would be the kind of person who could create community on social media, but I've met the most amazing people
I bet.
all over the world. I went on a retreat in Bali, fell in love with that place, and then led a retreat this year, and I'm leading another one next year.
We're going to Bali.
Woohoo! Sorry, that was loud.
But I think what is important about your story is that you had multiple things that led you to this path. So you were doing your own spiritual work, you were going to therapy, and you were starting to
doing
then
therapy with others.
Yeah,
you know,
doing therapy
working
with
them.
others. And were you helping people at the time with their own?
I mean, always, whether it's alcohol use disorder or just like some consequences of alcohol use, whether it's them or their spouse or their parent. I mean, all of our lives
It's
are
so
touched.
important, yeah, to talk about that.
Yes.
Just how alcohol is almost the Kevin Bacon of generational
Absolutely.
trauma.
But it's not 7 degrees or 6 degrees or whatever. It's like 1.
Yeah, like a half step.
I mean, if you don't have an uncle or a cousin or something, like you must have a very small family.
Right, or no one's talking about it.
No one's talking. They're very good actors.
And that is dangerous. In fact, maybe more so than telling the story.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Rich Girl Sober is all about generational knowledge, being friendly to one another about it,
Yes.
and then, you know, making dollars in the meantime.
And
Freedom and health is actually the biggest
Health and well-being
indicator.
are the ultimate currency.
Totally. I do want to acknowledge that your story also represents that it can be something that isn't this major blow up event in your life, this dramatic, just everything has been pulled out from underneath you and now you're awake. You can just start to incrementally make some changes.
Yes.
And get to a place where you feel safe enough to make that choice.
Absolutely.
And maybe stay in that choice.
Yeah, there was no rock bottom story. There was no dramatic thing. It's almost like I fell out of love with it and I transcended it and realized that it's not a necessary ingredient for the ultimate life of joy, and it actually gets in the way of that.
My story obviously was more of the traditional kind of life has completely turned upside down. It happened at a time, I mean, I was 14 when I picked up my first drink, and I was reaching for it because I was escaping, you know, major traumatic events that had happened in childhood that I just didn't want to look at.
Well, and did you even have the skills at 14?
Absolutely not. In fact, I don't
cope?
even think I was recalling them at the time. It was just a coping mechanism to feel accepted and loved in a social setting.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really afraid of anything. So handing me a Zima or a Smirnoff was honestly nice. It was a gesture. So it was not scary to me to chug that and then ask for the next.
Yeah.
But where it did get scary was when I picked up Everclear, which is quite a swing.
I mean, that's like 50%
That
alcohol.
is actually nail polish remover.
Yes.
So,
when you think about like a beer is like 4% and then 50%, that's scary.
yeah, I mean, I was going to be the best in the class, you know, I was really going for it.
You're going for a valedictorian drinker.
Because school was not going to work, you know?
Yeah. You're like,
You got
forget
to be good at
that.
something. No?
Yeah.
I went through that was transformational. And, you know, thank God my parents stuck with me through that, because there were many nights of hospital visits and pumped stomachs. And, well, I just had one stomach, but it was pumped several times. And
Multiple pumps in that one stomach.
yeah. And my awakening was at a time, I mean, I was 16 years old and I was headed to rehab. I didn't even have a driver's license.
Wow.
And I met the most incredible people I've ever known in my life. Truly. I mean, it was almost as if I was like Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, and I was collecting my friendships along this new path. And I didn't really know what Oz was or where it was, you know,
Just
going to
this
be.
abstract place, but the journey is healing you.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, being in rehab is one thing. Being in rehab at age 16 without a driver's license is like, wow, you've really seen it all, haven't you?
Yes.
I hadn't yet, but thank God I had an intervention early on, because
I mean, what a gift to
it
learn
was
that early
massive.
on and to just feel that kind of love and support from strangers that you meet along the way.
I think it's so important for people that are maybe struggling to know that there is the ability to have redemption, and there is always someone that will hold your hand and reach for you when you need
Absolutely.
it. You just have to
It's never
ask.
too late. Whether you're 16 or 76, it is never
100%.
never too late. And even going along with that Wizard of Oz metaphor, I almost think that alcohol and drinking culture and status and glamour, it's almost like the wizard, you know, this big theatrical thing that's been built up
nebulous.
But really all
in
it
the
is
clouds.
just this old guy behind the curtain.
Right.
You know,
right.
it's all an illusion.
He's like, congrats, you won the game. You figured it out.
Yay.
Yeah. When you're on the other side is when you win, I think.
Yes.
Truly. In sobriety.
Yes. When you see it for what it is and you're like, oh, actually, I'm good.
Yeah, and there's a maturity in that, you know, like you said, the control or the sense of rebellion is actually still intact, right?
Yes.
It's just in a different way, in a much healthier way. So what did you, when you made that choice, for me personally, I changed high schools and got headgear. So I definitely had a different friend group. I had quite the high school experience. I lived all sides.
Yeah.
But for you, when you made that decision overnight, so to speak, and kind of entered back into the same social circles, what was the response like?
You know, that's interesting. So that very week, I went to multiple social events, small ones. So my block where I live, we had like a block women's happy hour at someone's house. And I drank Topo Chico and lime, and nobody asked me anything, and nobody noticed.
Yes.
I mean,
look at that.
yeah.
It is possible. I knew it. So were you able, did you have access to non-alcoholic options?
So I was not happy about this. We need to do better with this. So basically they had kind of like this area where they had the ingredients for ranch waters. So there was like tequila and topo and lime. And then there was like a bin of unchilled bottled water off in the corner somewhere. And there was nothing else.
You're going to need to go to the custodian's closet for the water.
Yes. And so I was like, well, I'll just make myself a ranch water without the tequila. And,
Yum.
But I think we need to do better. Another option.
There needs to be equal
like
distribution.
a fun, not want-wah option for, we need some mocktails. There are amazing mocktail ingredients.
And a lot of people would, if they were given the choice, pick it up.
They would choose that.
They just don't want to have the conversation about where the other option is and why,
Yes.
because that's exhausting.
Where you tell people you're giving them alcohol, but you're really giving them mocktails.
Yes.
And see if people start acting kind of crazy and louder and, you know.
Yeah, I bet it's all just in your
I think in
perception
some,
of reality.
You know, when people get sloppy, yes, that's obviously they're intoxicated. But I think in the beginning, a lot of it is just placebo effect. Like we've told our brains it's time to let loose. It's time to make inappropriate jokes and laugh and
But
be
those
silly.
are always living inside. Just say them out loud. I shaved my
mean,
vag for
I
this.
shaved
You don't
my
have to be
vag for
drunk to say
this.
that.
Some people need to take a break or change their social patterns for a period of time. I think as much as you can continue doing what you've been doing and think of it as an experiment of how much fun can I have? Like, can I actually have more fun than I'm predicting? Mm-hmm. Will this dinner not be as boring as I'm predicting it will be without drinking?
Yeah.
And then also I think it's looking at how you spend your time and really getting radical about picking and choosing what you do with your time. You know, your time is limited on this earth. Mm-hmm. We cannot make more time. We can make more money. We can't make more time.
Right.
And so what do you want to do? And
What do you want to leave behind?
If it's not fun without drinking, it's probably just not fun, and maybe just say no. I think the antidote is like just really creating the life that you want to live and realizing you have more control than you think you do about how you spend your time. There's a lot of things in this world we have zero control over, but we do have autonomy over how we spend our time.
All right. So for those of you following along, I know we have been talking about quite a bit. We've covered alcohol use disorder. There's 11 qualifications, most of which overlap. You have to meet 2. This is not really something you want to meet in case anyone out there is competitive, but it is important to understand.
And even if you don't meet it, it still is extremely important to consider your relationship with alcohol.
And it gives you awareness of like, it's not the other things around you always. It might just be the thing you're poisoning yourself with.
Right.
You know, that might need to be the first thing you look at.
Yes.
So we also talked about just the emerging segment in our population that is now kind of becoming the rising drinking segment as a result of, you know, really positive things.
Yeah.
Higher income, better education.
It's driven, educated women.
Yeah, which is just a very confusing,
very paradoxical.
Yeah, it's a contradiction of sorts.
Yes.
We're more educated, therefore we should know that it's not as good, therefore we should make
right.
It's all cultural, it's all social norms that have been just ingrained.
Yes.
And then I do want to touch on, you know, this concept of, we talked about generational knowledge, looking to younger generations for what they're modeling, which is so positive, and then really not getting hung up on this concept of alcoholism just solely
Yes.
being in this generational curse that's passed down. It is in fact something that like can happen to you if you just create a habit that you're doing
Right.
over and over and over. And it's
And you cannot even have alcoholism, but be experiencing negative
right.
impacts from alcohol. You know, you don't have to wait until you're ruining your life to look at your relationship with alcohol.
So on that note, for those of you who are watching and thinking you're going to get off scot-free by just bypassing the one glass of wine, because we do need to cover this sticky topic of cancer,
Yes.
which is not one that anyone likes to talk about, but it is so critical
So
in regards to alcohol consumption. Obviously, women process alcohol differently than men,
Yes.
and so it's far more toxic to our body,
Yes.
and it is now proven to cause breast cancer. Yeah.
Yes.
Or at least increase our likelihood of getting breast cancer.
Yes. So alcohol is a misogynist. It discriminates against women.
Always,
Always.
you know, we've had to
For-
fight this hard and now we're just
Yes.
feeding the beast again.
So a woman can drink the exact same amount as a man, but her blood alcohol level will be higher. Therefore, her tissues, her body will be exposed to more alcohol. Therefore, she will be negatively impacted physically as a result. And we see that in cardiovascular functioning, metabolic health. So many people have cancer. Like, why is everyone getting cancer? It's
Especially breast cancer
everywhere.
is on the rise, you know,
Yes.
in younger women. So, yeah.
And so I had this
figure.
question for so long, like, why is cancer everywhere? What are we doing? Is it our water? Is it chemicals, pollution? What?
that could very well play a factor.
Absolutely.
However, yeah.
Yes, alcohol is not the only culprit, but there is evidence now that alcohol isn't just linked to cancer, but it causes cancer. So for decades, alcohol has been classified as a Category 1 carcinogen, up there with asbestos, radiation, and tobacco.
Oh my gosh.
You'll also find alcohol.
Haven't we learned?
Like, why hasn't anyone been talking about this?
Like, what kind of cocktail are we brewing over here?
Yes.
An asbestos drink with a
little
cigarette straw
Exactly.
and calling it alcohol.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so
Heartbreaking.
it's a classified Category 1 carcinogen, and it's not just heavy or even moderate alcohol use. It's also what would be considered as light alcohol use. So the World Health Organization released a study that was done in Europe, and they released data that they said 10 grams of alcohol per day,
Which is how much?
which is
in
14
our-
grams is 1 U.S. serving. So it's less than 1 U.S. serving of alcohol, so less than a glass of wine a day, causes a 12% increase in your risk for breast cancer.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's like, what? Why
This
don't
is
we know this? Like, we're
absolutely
told to
critical
do our
information.
monthly breast checks and our mammograms and all these things, but nobody's telling us that that glass of red wine we had with our high omega-3 fatty acid fish and green veggies that we thought was good for our heart is actually causing cancer.
What is that messaging? Better for your heart, but gives you a tumor?
And that's what this is about. This is not about alcohol as a moral issue. It's
It
not
is
about
not,
shame.
no.
It's not identifying people as problems. People are not problems.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol is a problematic substance. We need to equip ourselves with the knowledge so that we can make informed decisions about how we live our lives and really taking our health into account and our health span. How many years do I want to feel good?
Yeah.
If I live to be 90, I want to feel good till I'm 90.
And you don't want to work this hard to be where you are and then have it all go away and your life just be cut short because you decided to consume alcohol
Because
regularly.
you had a glass of wine at night and thought it was okay.
And don't sell it at the gas station next to like a bottled water.
Yes.
You know, it's just the accessibility of it is mind-blowing.
And it's not just breast cancer. It is known to cause 7 different types of cancer. Basically,
Great.
anything that it touches as it goes through your digestive system.
So throat cancer.
Throat cancer, colorectal cancer is the most common that it causes in men.
Wow.
And the reason it doesn't touch our breast tissue as we're digesting it, but it increases levels of estrogen in the body in women and men. And that is what causes the increase in breast cancer development and dementia. It kills gray matter in our brain. It is linked to dementia.
Yeah.
And the good news is that studies are showing that that's reversible, that in as little as 2 months after you stop drinking, you start regenerating gray matter Thanks to neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, our brains are amazing, amazing organs.
Prayers to our brains.
And so it's
Thank
not
you.
too late,
I think now I'd love to talk through what we as a community and as a culture can start to do to support people in their journey, whatever that looks like, whether they're deciding to go cold turkey, they might be doing a trendy liver detox, doesn't matter, pick your non-poison.
Right.
And let's start to set things up for people so they can just decide.
If you want to take a break and people ask you questions, you can tell them as little or as much as you would like. You can say, I just don't feel like drinking tonight.
I don't feel like drinking asbestos tonight is actually what you should say.
I'll pass on the ethanol, thanks.
To not participate.
Yeah, just say you're training for a marathon.
Or you're getting on Jeff Bezos' yacht tomorrow and you can't smell like stale vodka.
Yeah.
That's what rich girls would do.
That is what rich girls would do.
And then they'd run a marathon after. He's giving them like a ride to the marathon overseas.
Marathon, yes.
Cool. Just be cool.
Just be cool.
And rich in health.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yes.
I shaved my vag for this. How do we connect with you after this show? I will obviously leave details in the episode description. But
yes. Well, I'm on Instagram. It's Jane W. Ballard. Don't forget the W. And also I have a website, janewballard.com. And I have created a guide just for your listeners if they're interested in doing a little 30-day challenge, maybe Sober October.
Rich Girl Guide to Sobriety.
Rich Girl Guide to Sobriety. It's just
I'm in.
Just for your lovely fans.
Oh, yay.
And
let's do it.
Yeah, if you could link that to the show notes, and it'll take them to my website where they can just enter their email address and I'll send it on over to them. And I have a Sober October coaching group that is going to be starting up pretty soon. So even if you don't start October 1st, this is all about imperfection. Join me whenever you feel like it. Reach out. I'd love to hear from people, answer any questions,
Start
provide
whenever.
information.
You could even just like maybe learn more about it
Just get
in
curious.
that month. Yeah. And that's the start of your journey.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Thank you for creating that too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nothing cooler than that, than having some kind of letterhead and like a plan.
Yeah.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching today. And if you're wondering, I did shave my vag for this, and that's because you fill in the blank. And when you are running your global billion-dollar enterprise in the future, and someone asks you at the table, how do you make such qualified, responsible decisions every day? Is your answer going to be, it's because I drink straight gasoline? Absolutely not. Rich girls would never.